Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is a long-time Twitter friend of mine, Amanda, also known as Amanda Left Coast, or Amanda who has left the coast. She is a born and raised Californian Christian mother and CEO, and in this conversation, we speak about her political and personal trajectory. I really had wanted to hear more about her and hang out with her for quite some time now, and am glad to be the first to platform her in this way. Without further ado, here is Amanda. How's your business?
Good.
You busy?
It's going, yeah. Yeah, it's really, really busy. It's going really well. We just wrapped up a quarter and it's been very challenging, but we hit our numbers again. So, yeah.
And what is a quarter? Is that like
Yeah.
just the federal?
Yeah. Sorry. So it's a 3-month period. So we divide the year fiscally into quarters. So the second quarter is just
Along with everybody else, right? You're on the
yeah.
same menses, financial menses as the rest of
Yeah, well, some people
corporate
have
America.
some people do. Actually, there are variations. Like some people are on a calendar year quarterly system, which I am, and others, start their year at the end in Q4. So yeah, there are some variations, but for me, this was the end of Q2, second quarter of the year, and we did really well. Actually, I was surprised. I thought because I, had some, as you may have heard, the stock market has been kind of tanking. So
Yeah.
that's affected the tech industry quite a bit. And we had some clients that had to pull back, but
Yeah.
we still did okay. So
Good. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
It's pretty intense times, and it has been for a
yeah,
while.
yeah, it is. But I think this value proposition, the service that we offer is really, I think it's even more compelling now because we do marketing for startups, but we are very analytics driven. So we help them see the results of every dollar they spend, and they can easily see the value, and we give them visibility into that, which allows them to then turn around and tell their investors, this is how we performed, and we're not just wasting money, like we're spending it wisely. So they actually are looking for that kind of help right now, like more than ever.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You're,
So
you're on the efficiency side, I guess, of the matter.
effectiveness
Effectiveness. Yeah.
and efficiency. I mean, we're definitely, we definitely get results and help our clients generate leads and grow their business, but we do make sure they're efficient, that that all of their unit economics for their business look really good. So, yeah.
You're kind of, I was thinking, I don't know if unicorn is the correct adverb. I know that that has a lot of different associations, but you're a high-powered CEO. I don't know exactly your political arrangement, but you're Christian
Yeah.
and you're a
Yeah.
mother. And
Yeah.
so you got a lot of values going on, and you're really engaged with the world, and
Hmm.
not terribly gender conforming, if that really matters to our
Yeah.
generation, in reality. But
Yeah. I'm kind of hard to pin down, I would say. And I've also, politically, I've really changed my views, a few times in my adult life, trying to figure out politics. And at the moment, I definitely feel pretty homeless politically, and I would say my political orientation at the moment is just skeptical. Just especially if anything a politician says, I'm like, well, we'll see. Prove it. And so I think politically, I've definitely been all over the place. But one thing that has stayed constant in my life is my faith. Like that has been just steady Eddie.
mhm.
Um, and everything else about the world, I'm trying to figure out on a daily basis. What's going on? I'm very curious. And I think I have more questions than answers. A lot of my tweets are just questions. What is going on? What does this mean? I don't get it. And I genuinely want to know, and I get some really interesting replies. Like, I get information on Twitter. That was the main reason I started tweeting, was to learn, because when I arrived at a place where I no longer trusted the news, I was like, well, where do I go for information? How do I find out how do I hear other perspectives, once I realized that the news was very biased towards
What
one
was
perspective.
the breaking point and the lead up to that realization?
I think there were a couple of things. It was a process, probably a process of a year. One of the big ones was the Andrew Yang primary campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So I was Yang Gang. I supported Andrew Yang. I was very drawn to his, what I thought at the time was genuine authenticity and a desire to kind of unite. I was tired of the divisiveness. I still don't like the divisiveness, which is also, how I ended up finding Eric and Brett Weinstein and, kind of these people, these IDW people on Twitter, because they seem to have a genuine desire to really let's figure this out. Come on, America. Like, we're one country, we have some values in common, let's figure this out. So I was drawn to Andrew Yang, and the way that he was treated by the media, I don't know if you remember, but I was so appalled by it. So that was a moment.
So this is in 2020 then?
2019, I think.
2019, okay. Okay, the primaries spilled over into 2020, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it started in 2019, and I would watch the debate. I remember the debate where they turned off his mic, and he was trying to talk. They would put up some other Asian man's face on the TV, and with his name, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these people that talk all day about how bad
Stopping
racism
Asian
is.
hate.
Yeah, like, and they're like, oh, they all look the same to us. Like, we don't know who Andrew Yang is. And I was like, there's no way that they really, that was when I started feeling like I'm getting conspiratorial, because I was like, there's no way they don't know. He's running for president. Like, you can't get his face right. So I started getting really frustrated at that point. There were other things. So, like the Covington kid story.
That was in 2018. Or no,
that was
early 2019, right?
I didn't find out about it until 2019.
Okay.
I completely, like, prior to 2019, I pretty much believed the news.
Okay.
And, for the most part, I was just like, well, it's the news. Like, they're not going to report on something that didn't happen. Like, what is this, Russia?
We don't have show trials over here. No courts in America.
This isn't the Soviet Union. Maybe a little. So when a friend pointed that out to me, and I kind of dug in and just like watched all the footage, I was pretty mad. And then, there were other incidents. By the time when COVID started, I was actually not really watching the news anymore because of all of those things. I was like, well, why watch it? If I have to investigate every claim that they make on the news, like, I don't have time for that. Forget it. So I just turned off the news, and I wasn't even watching it. And I was just watching the press conferences every day, and I was watching them, watching the whole thing, because, like, everybody in America was on the edge of my seat about COVID. Like, oh my God, this is like the craziest thing that's happened in my lifetime since 9/11 for sure. And so I watched the press conferences, and I would watch Trump and Fauci, and I hung on their every word. And I remember when Trump was talking about, they were experimenting with different anecdotes or treatments for COVID. And my takeaway when he was rattling off this list was, oh, like they're looking at at treatments that exist or in everyday household items like UV, like vitamin D might be helpful. He mentioned hydroxychloroquine, and then this ingredient in bleach. And I watched that whole press conference and was thinking, oh, well, that's really encouraging. Like maybe they're going to find something that already exists that they can use to treat COVID. And then the next day, all over the news, it was, Trump tells everybody to drink bleach. And I remember going, he didn't say that. Like, I watched the whole press conference. I don't remember him saying that. And I don't even like Donald Trump, but I was like, this is just, I'm over it. So that was really, it probably took me a full year to just really, really not trust the media anymore.
So winding back to 2017.
Yeah.
Women's marching.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you at then in 2017? Trump just gets elected, or at least installed. Where are you at positionally and involved, either emotionally or in action, with the body politic?
Yeah. So at that time, I was definitely blue leaning and, had voted for Obama. And I was blue because of my bad experiences that I had with I did not like the relationship of religious leaders with politics and the way that politics is being woven into the church. And so I kind of just pushed that away. And I really felt like there was also like some genuine intolerance, that the criticism of Christianity as being intolerant, like I actually saw it, and so I felt that, I was more aligned with that message of compassion and tolerance and welcoming everyone. And, but that kind of started to change. So in 2017, I was very upset that Trump was elected. I felt, I have little girls, and I felt like, he admitted it, but keep in mind as well that at that time I was still believing the news. Like they would report something and I would be like, oh, that happened, and not investigate it at all. So I was very upset that he won. I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe I live in a world where this man was caught on tape admitting to assaulting women and nobody cared. And it really bothered me. And I decided to march. And I took my daughters to the Women's March. This was in 2017. And I laugh now because I had a sign that said, mandatory psych evaluations should be required for a president. I can't remember exactly what the sign said, but like looking at Joe Biden now, I'm just laughing at that because I actually could hold up that sign today. It's still true. I still think it's a good idea. But yeah, so I marched, and the one thing I noticed immediately was that it was really, the energy was very negative and angry. And I felt, I was so naive. I mean, I hadn't protested before. I was like just showing up this protest, and of course they're angry. That's what a protest is. And thankfully, this was before things got really crazy, so that there was no violence or, naked people or anything weird going on. It really was just a march, but it was still, the vibe and the energy was still really kind of dark. And I remember getting my girls out of there and going, I'm not sure that was a good thing to do. But I was really protesting. I was just upset that Trump won. I very much had, that Trump derangement syndrome at the time. And I thought, I didn't know what to do. I thought I should make a stand and I should let my daughters know that I don't support this. So that's where I was at that time. And I tell people now, and people that follow me on Twitter are like, no way. I'm very different now for sure. But yeah.
Before I want to hear more about how you changed and got reoriented or became a hyper skeptic or whatever you are
Yeah.
now. But you said that your faith is run through the whole thing. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting that you have one relationship with an ideology
Mm-hmm.
as a neutral term, and
Mm-hmm.
then political ideologies are changing on top of that. So where does your faith begin, if you don't mind?
Where does my faith begin?
Or where did it begin?
It began as a child.
Okay.
Um, so faith has come very easy for me, and I recognize that too. Like I understand when people don't believe or can't believe. I'm like I get it, but for me, it's always made sense that there is a God, and I definitely my faith became very personal because when I was raised in a Christian home. However, there was a period of time when, specifically like in junior high and high school, when I was going to church by myself, and it wasn't like a family thing, and there was no pressure at all. Quite the opposite. I was in public school my whole life, and there was actually more pressure at that time to kind of break away. Like it wasn't really cool to be a Christian. I was in Southern California. I wasn't living in the South or anything, and I was in the public school system. So I had just had so many experiences, very personal experiences, that God was real to me, and my relationship was very real to me. I did decide in college to dig in more into the other side of the debate. So I spent a lot of time, this was pre-social media. I was like on discussion boards as an anonymous user, but I would like get into debates with Buddhists and atheists, and they weren't heated debates. They were like really respectful, like we were friends. They were more like maybe debate's not even the right word. Discussions. They were discussions.
Yeah.
I asked questions. I wasn't trying to convert them. I was like asking them questions. They were asking me questions. It was very enriching. I learned a lot. And then I went to college and I studied the Bible, how the canon was formed. I went to Israel. I really went all in, just like, I want to know the truth, and
what was your degree in?
Well, my degree was in English literature, but I went to Vanguard University. I went to a Christian college. So I basically minored in Bible. And so I studied, like New Testament, Old Testament, apologetics. I read like everything C.S. Lewis wrote. And then I also, listened to a lot of debates with Hitchens and Dawkins and Sam Harris. And, I listened to the arguments against Christianity and the arguments for Christianity. And, ultimately it solidified my faith. I obviously remained a Christian, but it was really good because I got to a point where I can talk about my faith intelligently. If somebody has questions, I can explain, but I don't do it online. I dance around it, but I try to avoid like actually debating online because I just don't think especially Twitter, it's just the worst possible forum for that. But I know why I believe what I believe, and I'm not just I don't know.
But you were not a believer first. You were an experiencer first. You didn't have, I guess you were born and raised in a context where Christianity was there, but it sounds like your faith was built and based on primary.
Well, I believed first, and then I had experiences.
Okay. Charismatic? Or
no, I wasn't raised in a charismatic home. That's a good question. I was raised in like, it just evangelical Protestant, but like Calvary chapels, if you're
Okay.
familiar
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
that
Yeah, yeah.
denomination, and non-denominational and not charismatic, but I definitely like just had personal, experiences like, and I don't talk about them a lot because I feel like they were kind of, I don't know, they were for me,
Mm.
and not really. Uh, I mean, I do tell people about them in one-on-one conversations and stuff, but I just really like. Let me just put it this way: I had experiences where I felt like God really revealed Himself to me or made Himself like known, um, and I also was, very impressed actually with the logical case for Christianity as well. So I think, yeah, I'm a lifer, but I also think that my faith kind of kept me grounded when I started to go woke, because the minute wokeness became angry and intolerant, that was the part of the right that pushed me away. That was what pushed me away from the right. So when I started experiencing it on the left, I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, that's not, I want nothing to do with that. And I really credit my faith for grounding me in in those values of like loving your enemies, loving one another, having grace, redemption, forgiveness. And religious people can not have those values. People can say they're Christian and not have any grace for you. And so I think this is why, like, having my faith be my own and my own understanding of who Jesus was and what He said and what that means, keeps me away from certain movements that I feel like are off that path, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm. You don't have to expound on these experiences. I'm just curious about them
Okay.
as just informing of the human condition generally,
Yeah.
and then also how people end up formulating values and getting a sense of the world more. So that's just, I guess, the question. The experience itself, because I've had experiences too, which
Okay.
I would use the same language as you,
Yeah.
and some of them are kind of I don't have visual or auditory experiences like that. It's more like a feeling. I have a feeling of
Peace.
closeness, peace,
Mm-hmm.
love,
Yeah.
an energy, maybe a subtle vibration, something like that. And when I can get myself and discipline myself to return there, then I go through a process of kind of waking back up into the busy world
Yeah.
with a little extra edge.
It's really hard to talk about because it's putting yourself out there and people are going to mock you. I mean, they mock, I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
hate to open myself up to ridicule
Yeah.
unnecessarily, but I mean, one of the things I can say that has been consistent is, answered prayers has been a big thing in my life. And, things that I would put in the bucket of, you know, miraculous. Like, I've had I have some pretty crazy stories of things that have happened that, um, you would have to chalk up to a statistical uh, miracle. So yeah, there are a number of things, and yeah, I get really shy about it. I apologize,
No, that's okay.
um, but I think what you just talked about, though, like the feeling of peace, and in the midst of really hard times, in the midst of really difficult circumstances, and also like joy. I mean, I sometimes I just have a lot. I have a lot of like a steady state of contentment and happiness, and I think um, it's, I don't know. For me, Christianity is certainly provides a lot of fulfillment, but I also, I have to be honest, like I do think it's true as well. I make no, I'm not shy about that either. Like I'm not one of those metaphorical Christians, like, oh, it's a great myth around which I orient my life. It's like, no, I actually think it's true. I'm kind of old school in that way, but yeah, I think Jesus was a real person. Yeah.
What about entrepreneurialism? Did your faith lead you there, or other life circumstances? Just
No, I never thought I would be where I am today. Completely not a path I set for myself. So, so I got married in my 20s, and my husband and I, right out of the gate, were like, okay, we just didn't have big aspirations. We just wanted to start a family, and he was a contractor and a finished carpenter. So he was working full time, and then not COVID. I can't keep my catastrophes straight.
Let me guess, the 28
yes, 2008 recession.
Crisis.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. So that happened, and it pretty much put him out of business. So it was catastrophic, truly. I mean, we were living in a small town in Oregon. He was building houses, and it just completely wiped out his business. I was working at an ad agency, and, I got pregnant. He was out of work after I had the baby, and I went back to the ad agency. It just was not a good work environment for working moms at all. It was bad. And there was a software company in town that was hiring, so I applied. So I had to put my oldest daughter in daycare after 8 weeks, because my husband and I were both working. We were just trying to make it. We bought a house in 2006. I laugh about it now. Like, we bought at the absolute top of the market. It was an interest-only loan with an adjustable rate mortgage. So we were completely hosed. This is one of my miracle stories, by the way, because we got through it. But so we didn't know what we were going to do. And I was just working, and I ended up at the software company. I got pregnant again, and I got promoted while I was on maternity leave. And at that point, my husband was like, yeah, I went on maternity leave, and they were like, oh, wow, she was doing a lot. We should make sure she comes back. So they promoted me while I was on leave. And at that point, my husband was working for Habitat for Humanity.
Oh, really?
And and we had a conversation because we did the math with daycare, and we're like, well, it doesn't make sense. Like, it would make more sense for you to just stay home. And is that, and he's like, yeah, like, let's do it and have the kids not be in daycare. So then he became a stay-at-home dad. And one thing led to another, and I kept moving up in my career. And just, it just worked out that way. So it wasn't something that we planned, but I ended up being really good at what I do, and just continued to kind of move up and find success in that.
Do you mind, without being too specific, like, what is this that you do, or what is this good thing that you're at, or good at this thing?
So I do marketing for tech companies, mostly startups, early stage startups. Having been an English major, I am a good writer, and communicator. So the writing and the communication piece, I think, just it's how I got into marketing initially, but then it just allowed me to kind of tell stories effectively, having studied literature and understanding story structure and a story arc. I was really good at, like, coming into a company and saying, okay, who's the audience, and being empathetic. I think is also a big part of marketing. Psychology is a big part of success, being able to get into someone else's head and kind of understand how they're feeling and what they need to hear. And So that's what I do, and I do it specifically for tech companies. So yeah.
So the basis of the skill is this ability to tell stories and also to absorb the information and then translate it into a communicable form that then draws more attention to it, and then you make value by doing that.
Yeah.
Just running a business is also a bunch of other skills and stuff. Not just the organizational skills, but like all the stuff that goes into making a business, I think, is like the closest thing that we can do to test ourselves, to really test our mettle. Like when it's all basically on your shoulders, or at least you're heavily involved in a business and you're not part of this huge sprawling system that has a bunch of checks or defenses against reality catching up to you. You know, when you're kind of an entrepreneur in a business, it's like one of the highest forms of engagement in life.
Yeah. It's very crazy, but I think, having been like a head of marketing, VP of marketing at, big companies, I prefer what I'm doing now because I like, number one, I like being able to be accountable to myself. Like, we're going to be successful, but it's on me. I know it's weird, but I prefer that, because when you work at a company, you're so depending on other people to do what they're supposed to do, and it's so frustrating when they don't. Or if there's, if the CEO is making mistakes or bad decisions. So it's a lot of pressure, but it's also so rewarding and exciting to build something from nothing and to create something from the ground up. It's very fulfilling. I never thought I would do this. It's not like, I'm not one of those like girl boss, I want to start a company and, be a CEO. I actually was recruited to just be the general manager of this company, and I was supposed to just help the CEO run it. But after a few months, the man who was the CEO was too busy because he was running another company, and I was doing everything myself anyway. So then they just made me the CEO. So it's kind of interesting, Benjamin. I feel like I kind of walk into these situations a little bit like, oh, I guess I'm going to do this now. Kind of the story of my life.
The doors just kind of open.
They open, and I'm very hardworking. I work really, really hard. I don't have all the answers. I'm not the smartest person in the room. But I know what I don't know. I ask for help when I need help, and I work really hard.
So 2019 turns into 2020.
Yeah.
You'd given up on news. You're like, why bother? Now you're watching news, and then you're seeing this weird stuff in the news, and then the pandemic, or the response to the pandemic, happens, and then 2020 happens.
Yeah.
Which is very, very, it's probably peak tumult, at least so far this century, probably. Hopefully we don't get more tumultuous than that. But how do you start to find your way? You start to listen to voices online, and how do you keep yourself calm and navigate through all this chaos?
Well, it definitely, my faith keeps me calm in all chaos. And I did stay calm. I think my calmness it made me a bit odd. I felt a bit odd man out, because being in Southern California, everybody was freaking out and panicked, and oh my God, and I really felt like and because part of it too, Benjamin, is probably, I wasn't watching the news, right? So I wasn't drinking the fire hose of fear and panic that was on the news all the time. At that time, I was on Twitter. I was trying to find reasonable voices. I actually really liked Anthony Fauci at the very beginning. I thought, oh, great, he's going to lead us out of this. I tried to stay open. I tried to just look at the numbers and the data and the facts. And as you know, it was very hard to get that information and very hard to sort through. The response is what made me realize that I might be a libertarian.
Especially in California, Southern California specifically.
I mean, right as soon as they announced the lockdowns in California and they were like, Disneyland is closed, everything is locked down, I immediately had a really bad feeling about it and was like, wait a minute, you can't just, especially small business owners, because I've worked a lot with small business owners, at tech companies that serve small business owners. And I know how hard their lives are, and that every day that their doors are shut is like a meal that they're not going to be able to afford. And they live paycheck to paycheck. And so I thought about them a lot, and I was really upset. I'm like, you can't tell this restaurant owner or this yoga studio owner that they can't open their business. And this is America. We don't do this in America, you know, and I had this really strong negative reaction to it from the start. So then I started really digging into the data and the numbers and going, is this justified? Is this like, this has to be, in my opinion, the black plague if you're going to do that. It's got to be so deadly and so crazy, you know, horrific. And is it? Like, I'm not clear on that, you know, and I don't think this meets the threshold for you, because there are many ways for humans to suffer, and suffering from COVID is one way. That you take everything away from them that they spent their entire life building, that's pretty devastating too. And some people would, you know, there were people that committed suicide. And so I was very anti-lockdown. And I think everyone knows that, like on Twitter, it's pretty vocal about it. And yeah, I don't live in California anymore.
Mm-hmm. And it's catching up to us. The lockdownerism, as it's called, is now wrecking our economy. They kind of,
yeah.
Do you think, is that fair? Is that how you see like the riptide occurring with the drastic state of our economy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am definitely no expert on the economy, but I do think that there were a number of bad decisions that were made along the way. The lockdowns being one, and then the bailout. You know, like, we're just going to print money. We're going to, you know, put a moratorium on your bills. We're going to, you know, give you
paid time off,
unemployment, paid time off. And so, you know, I saw that, you know, as I started this company during COVID, like, people were just opting out of working. It was hard for me to hire people because they were just deciding, I'm just going to take a break right now. So I think that it was a perfect storm for the economy, and just one bad decision after another. It almost felt like a controlled demolition of our economy.
Another one of those conspiracy theories.
I know. But I mean, I was just like, it literally felt like you couldn't do a worse job if you tried. Are you trying? These are like, what did you expect to happen? Of course, this is going to result in a recession. It's been very frustrating to watch. Yeah.
Well, what were some of the tools that you used to kind of, I guess you did a lot of research then, primary research, and then I guess you would vet people, independent creators or journalists and stuff, and kind of create your own kind of news feed?
I actually was trying to get to, okay, so I was looking at hospital data. I remember New York being kind of the bellwether in the beginning. And I felt like hospitalization data was really important because that kind of told you the severity of the disease. So I remember going, to New York government website and looking at hospital data to see how many people are hospitalized with COVID. And, I was just parsing it together. I mean, I wasn't, I'm no Alex Berenson or anything. I wasn't like, pulling from all these sources, but I did my best to just, I followed a lot of different people on Twitter. I followed all of the main trusted doctors and, Nick Christakis and all of those people. Of course, I watched all the press conferences. And where I landed was I did not feel that the lockdowns were justified. I just did not. I don't think they helped. And I think that there should have been more pushback, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you went to a state with a little bit more pushback eventually.
Yeah.
Or wiggle room, maybe, is the right way to say it?
Yeah. And I didn't move there just for that reason. I had a number of reasons for relocating there. Mm-hmm. But, I definitely, the lockdown thing, I couldn't handle it. And the hypocrisy of Gavin Newsom was very frustrating as well.
Do you think he'll be the next president?
Oh my God. I don't know. No, but I didn't think Trump would win. I didn't think Biden would win. So I'm not good at calling these outcomes.
So when did you start Twittering in earnest, or at least finding that you had a voice that was getting responded to?
I think I started tweeting. I feel like it was 2019. I was kind of tweeting about Yang. I was kind of Yang, and
okay.
And was interacting a lot with Yang supporters. So it was probably 2019. When I started getting noticed, I'm not sure. 2020, 2021.
Was it around the lockdown issue, or?
I had some tweets go viral and they were completely random.
Yeah.
Like a giant sequoia tree that I posted, or a dad joke. I don't, originally it wasn't around that at all. But then I think at some point I started speaking up in defense of people that I felt were being unfairly attacked, and saying, hey, I think this is kind of ridiculous, to attack this person. And I got a lot of likes. There were a lot of people that resonated with that and felt like, yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, it is kind of unfair to attack that person. And I don't know, it just kind of grew from there. But I definitely, during COVID, for sure, was on Twitter a lot, both to get perspectives and information and to vent my own frustrations. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How has your topics developed since then? What do you find yourself gravitating to?
Well, I'm still really interested in what's going to happen next with mandates and policies. I kind of keep an eye on that. I think I'm lately on Twitter, talking more about theology and faith related topics. But yeah, I'm on Twitter a bit less than I used to be. It's interesting because what I don't tweet about is very much at all is my job or what I do for a living. I don't know. I think because I'm just in that world all day, every day, well over 40 hours a week. When I'm on Twitter, it's more like a break from that for me.
Where in the theology land do you land?
Well, Like,
particular
how do I?
tradition, or I guess you're still a Protestant?
Yeah, definitely a Protestant. I think it's interesting because I'm learning a little bit more about Orthodox, and I actually agree with um, a lot of their theological perspectives. But I would say I'm still a Protestant. I'm very much a Protestant, and I was raised kind of non-denominational evangelical, so I think that's still what I am, but I'm not. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't really feel like I've latched on to any one denomination or tradition.
You're religiously homeless too.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I'm definitely like I read the Bible, and I read a lot of books, and I do find churches to go to, and I go to church, but I don't really feel very attached, I guess, to a denomination. But I have some fundamental, like, there are certain things, like with Catholicism, for example, that I can't, like, get on board with that. But I respect it. I like going to
what's
Catholic
one of the
churches.
issues in Catholicism? You just hate Mary, right?
I don't hate Mary, but I do, I don't believe, like, for example, in transubstantiation. I don't believe that Mary ascended to heaven, or that she was immaculately conceived, or like, there's just certain things that I just am not, I don't believe actually happened. But I, have great respect for the tradition and the history. And so all love to Catholics, like, no offense. I just don't identify with Catholicism personally, but.
What about the relationship between your theology and your experiences of Christianity, specifically in America, and gender, specifically woman, and how the Bible lays that out or establishes that category and lays out particular advice or regulatory principles on the different sexes?
Good question. So my perspective in reading the Bible is that there's actually it's very underrated in terms of the honor given to women, and the respect. And I like to point to certain characters in the Bible that kind of are evidence of that. But like Deborah, who was a judge of Israel, and a leader of Israel. Proverbs 31, which gets quoted a lot, but if you actually read Proverbs 31, she works, and she's a very savvy businesswoman.
Is Psalm 31 about Deborah?
Proverbs 31 is a passage about a virtuous woman, and a virtuous, like, godly wife or woman. It's like the whole chapter is honoring this woman, and it's interesting how she's described, but she's definitely a hard worker. So I always like that passage because I point to it when people say women shouldn't be breadwinners or shouldn't work, because it says that she provided food for her household, and she bought and sold at the market. So it's kind of interesting. And then, I think that Jesus was incredibly honoring to women. So what I love about the Gospels is that in that time, the testimony of a woman did not count in court. So you had to have male witnesses to a crime or to anything to testify. So it's just always been interesting to me that the first testimony was Mary, a woman. And she was the first witness, the first one to receive the good news and to receive the gospel, if you will, and accept it. And then you have, at his resurrection, women were the first to hear the good news that he rose again. And so in both cases, you had, Mary going to Joseph and telling him, hey, I'm pregnant, but don't worry, and he had to believe her. And women back then were not believed, like socially and in society. And then at the tomb, you had the same situation where women were the first to see him, or to hear that he rose again, and they went back to the disciples and said, hey, he's risen. So those are kind of overlooked, I think, and are actually for that time, to have a man sitting and writing the gospel and writing that story and writing it in that way is really remarkable. That would have been very unusual. And really, if they wanted people to believe the story in that time, to believe that Jesus really did rise from the dead and they were making it up, they would have had men see him first, because that would have been more accepted by the people of that day. So I always thought that was interesting. And I love that. I think it's very honoring. And then, there's you have many stories of women that Jesus encountered, in which they were being discarded by society, and he was lifting them up. And the woman that was about to be stoned to death, the woman at the well, who had been married multiple times and discarded by multiple men. And so I think that there's this beautiful thread throughout. Oh, another one. Gosh, now they're all coming to me. Rahab at Jericho, who was a prostitute and was saved. God saved a prostitute from perishing at Jericho. So there's just like all these stories of these women who were kind of honored, even though they were at the absolute bottom of society. So there's a message there. And I think a lot of people focus on something Paul said, like one verse, and they just latch onto that and say, Christianity is misogynistic. It's like, well, wait a minute. What about all these other stories and all these other women that are also mentioned? So, yeah.
You said that it was unpopular to go to church when you were junior high and high school, and yet you persisted. But there's also pressure from women to disregard Christianity because of its oppressive nature. And then there's also pressure. Well, then we have a wide variety of different feminist thought about what a woman is and how power is should be given or got or emanated from her. So how have you looked at the world and how American women have existed and been represented in your lifetime, and finding a relationship to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when I became the breadwinner, having shared that story of how I became the breadwinner, it was like not our plan. It just kind of did what I had to do. And I did get, there were some women in my church that were like, oh, I'm so sorry you have to work. That's so sad. And just really like making me feel bad about it. And like my life just sucks, because I have to work and I have kids, instead of lifting me up and being encouraging. And then at the same time, there were men who would say to my husband, like, you should be the breadwinner, like you should be working. And we both just had to kind of detach ourselves from what society thought or what people thought of our lives. Like, we're going to do what we have to do. We know our situation. We know why we're doing this, and it's nobody's business, and who cares what they think. And so we just got kind of inward and just found friends that were non-judgmental and a church that was non-judgmental, and but yeah, there was definitely, especially among the conservative ranks, this like a little bit of pushback on our alternative lifestyle. But
you guys were queering the binary there.
Right. and then gender, like in society. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's so funny because in this day and age, I understand in the old days when work, like providing for your family, meant you literally had to like go hunt or something and you had to kill an animal and drag it back to the house. Okay, I get it. Like that's the job for men. But we're talking about sitting at a computer, like there's nothing intrinsically manly about that or womanly about that. It's, you do what you have to do to take care of your family. And my husband's a contractor and, did tons of work around the house to increase the value of our home, so we didn't have to hire a contractor. So he was like working super hard and doing all kinds of things. It's not like he was, sitting around. And so I just think there's some weird social pressures that don't make any sense and don't have anything to do with gender. Like he's, a very masculine man, and I don't feel masculine just because I'm a CEO. Like it's just a laptop, It's not very heavy. I don't need muscles to lift it. So I don't know. I just ignore it, I guess. I do think the gender thing is kind of crazy. It's there's a lot of, again, I'm a very tolerant person. I very much want to honor people and respect whatever they want to be called, whatever name they want me to refer to them as, etc. But I do think respect is a two-way street. So, like, I'll respect you, you respect me too. I think that's how it should be. It doesn't seem to be that way right now.
Before the gender thing, there was this feminism thing. Did you ever investigate feminism, or you just went to atheism instead?
I never really investigated feminism.
You were never introduced to it or called to it?
I've been called a feminist, like, incorrectly. Like, people assume that I am one because I have a high-powered job. I don't consider myself a feminist. I mean, I think I appreciate what women did to kind of pave a way for me to be able to vote and have a career and, things like that. But feminism is not something that I really have been interested in at all. I'm very interested in theology for sure. But yeah, no.
And what is it about theology that's so interesting?
Well, because I went down this path of like understanding what's true and really genuinely wanting to know the truth. I'm interested in philosophy. I'm interested in literature. I just am not, like, feminism to me. Let me put it this way. I am not interested in exploring how oppressed I am. I'm not interested in exploring how the world has done me wrong. And the minute people start talking to me in that way, I kind of check out. Like, it's just not my outlook on life. So I think that's really what it boils down to at the end of the day.
And theology, I still don't really know what does that mean to you?
The study of God.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How does one study God?
Well, I think people study him in a lot of different ways, but I'm interested in, my anchor for studying God would be, for my faith, the Bible. But if I'm studying what other people believe about God, I might read their holy books, or, theology and apologetics was something I was really interested in too. So understanding what the defense is of Christianity, what the counter debate is, and, what does Sam Harris think, and free will. And like, I just love going down those rabbit holes. I just find it very fascinating and interesting. It's always interested me. It probably always will.
One, a person stumbles into creating content that's focused on anti-woke or being anti-woke, or you study wokeness and you be anti-woke. And one tool that one uses when studying that is to say it's a religion or it's a religious consciousness that is latent and is now active again. It's kind of a broken theology, this, that. And then one gets tired of making that content and you start to one looks for other solutions or paths or alternatives to this present world order. And one of those paths would be Christianity, and at least some sort of more or less explicit Christian kind of backbone to our society. I don't know if that's possible or not. So I'm just wondering, when you look at the world and you look at your faith, is it just your faith, or do you think that society itself belongs to that too, or needs to be aware of that too, or is...
Well, yeah, I mean, I am of the opinion that there is a truth. I believe what I believe is true, and I do believe that it would benefit people to agree with me. But I think it's a conundrum, because for me, evangelism is the only time I've ever evangelized, like really shared my faith with someone, is after I've built a relationship with them and we're friends and they ask. And they're like, tell me, like, I really want you to talk to me about this. And I, like, for me, I think, well, a couple of things. One is, I do think that there's a vacuum. I do think that people are missing meaning. I think it's possible to have that meaning without being a Christian. I'm not one of those people that thinks you have to have religion to have values of any kind, but I do think it helps. And I think what I see is there's a vacuum, and it's kind of being, I don't know if it's being filled with these ideologies or with like self-love, self-worship, just going so inward. The answers are within you, and it's you, me. Because when you have a society filled with people that are just pursuing their own self-interest, I think that's kind of where we're at. And that's what's like underlying the woke ideology, but maybe all of it is this real self-interested pursuit. So people, I think, really need to have a reason to beyond themselves. And I actually think people want to, like, they want to be part of something bigger and something beyond themselves. Like maybe that emptiness might be why they're becoming so zealous about things like COVID or, BLM, or, because they want to make the world a better, they want to feel like they're part of a movement, part of something bigger than themselves. Like they feel like they have this destiny, but they don't know what it is. That's my sense. I don't really know what the solution is, because obviously, I think that Jesus is the answer to everything. But you can't just shove that down people's throats. They really have to believe it. I think that the church has done a very poor job, generally speaking, defending what we believe, like understanding why we believe what we believe, and having really good answers for people who have really good questions. There's just way too much shaming and silencing people who ask questions. I'm very grateful, because I grew up in a house where that didn't happen. And it was completely okay to ask questions and to pursue the answers. And that's another parallel I see, like, especially with COVID, like the shaming for asking questions. I hate seeing that in any context. I think that's That's not how you pursue truth. That's not how you find out truth. So unfortunately, a lot of people were raised in Christian homes where they asked their parents, like, well, this doesn't make sense to me, explain it. And the parents were like, you just have to believe it. And they just, walked away as a result because they weren't getting good answers to good questions. So, yeah, I think, there's definitely, people are definitely trying to be part of something bigger. That's what it seems like to me.
And even though you have faith, you don't evangelize. It doesn't seem like you're trying to convince anybody. And maybe you do, but I would think that there is a zealotry within Christianity, or can arise in Christianity. And if the woke are, let's just say that they're mostly acting with good hearts and they want to save the world, isn't that what Jesus would have you do? Isn't that kind of a Christian, or how is it done properly?
How's it done properly? I think that's the key. I mean, wanting to help people and being passionate about, making the world a better place. There's nothing wrong with that, but at what point does it become, I think at the point where you are warring against other people and you're entering, like, one of the verses that stands out to me as a Christian, it's like, we don't wrestle with flesh and blood. Like, you're not, like, the person in front of you is not the enemy. There's, you pray, there's spiritual warfare, but like every person that you meet is, created by God. God loves that person, and you're supposed to love them too. That's the foundation of my faith. And so the minute somebody is like becoming intolerant and hateful towards other people, like, that's the line for me. I'm like, that's not my faith. That might be another religion or another system of belief, but it's certainly not mine. And so when I think of zealotry, that's what I think of. I think of that, like, that anger, like, and whenever I see it, I get really bothered by it. And you do sometimes see Christians do that. I mean, it's for sure. Like, I've called people out on Twitter that claim to be Christians and are high profile, and they are just railing against a group of people. I didn't like Trump, but I never hated Trump supporters. I was never like, oh, everyone that supports Trump is, an idiot and evil and whatever. Like, that, just putting people into a category in a group, demonizing them, attacking them. The minute you start doing that, I'm sorry, but you're not on the good side of whatever. Even if your cause was good to begin with, you've crossed to the dark side.
Yeah, you become the monster you're fighting.
Yeah, I think so.
Are you tempted to ever break out of just little sentences thrown into timelines and maybe write at length, or even make some young adult fiction, so you can get canceled by the young adult fiction?
I actually am. And the only thing that's prevented me from doing it is my work and just how incredibly busy I've been. But yeah, I am. And I actually was recently asked to write something. And so I'm working on something right now.
What topics are you being asked or courted to write about?
Yeah, so the topic is going to be about my journey from kind of the religious right and the pendulum swing over to the left, and then how I ended up in the middle. And I don't even know if I'm in the middle. I'm kind of just on my own. But just how that happened, and kind of the mob mentality that you see on both sides of the political spectrum. When you get too far right or too far left, it's not good, in my opinion.
It's not even left or right. It's just too involved in a topic, any given topic. It just kind of dynamic occurs.
Yeah.
Do you ever snap out of that, or do you always hesitate before even getting close to that? Do you ever find yourself kind of getting a little tribal?
Oh yeah. I'm sure I get a little tribal. I think it's interesting. Like, I think that I tend to find people that I really trust or that I like, and then I will defend the person. I don't know if I defend like a tribe as much as I do people, like individual people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm very loyal.
What's the topic you think you'll be that's been most fascinating to you lately? You mentioned theology. Is there a specific theology or even a political movement that you're entranced by? Or
I've been, yeah, okay. So, well, you kind of mentioned it. I think the parallels between certain movements and religion is something that I've been really fascinated by and interested in. And, you know, I tweet about it a lot. And not just wokeism, but, you know, I think like vaxism, the very hardcore everybody must get the vaccine and it must be mandated. And, you know, I started to really see parallels there. And I think that that's fascinating because, again, it's just the parallels are so striking to me. I think because I'm so close to it, I just tend to see it more, especially Christianity, you know, like really one-to-one parallels with Christianity.
How? Like believe you will be saved, or?
Yeah, like, I mean, pretty much, like they're pretty
Get
much
your
say,
booster Eucharist.
They just ran an ad last week that said, you know, faith in the vaccine, on a church sign, you know, come and get your booster, put your faith in the vaccine, just things like that they just come right out and say. I remember Rio de Janeiro, they had their statue of Christ the Redeemer, and it said "Vaccine saves" right across the chest. It doesn't get more in your face than that. Nativity scenes with the three wise men holding QR codes for, you know, to show their vaccine status and things like that. I mean, it's just really striking and to me kind of an indication that you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm still wrapping my head around what it's an indication of, but I think one is that the fear of death is very pronounced. I think people are really just across the board. Like, we've been very fortunate to live in this society where we have access to all this medical care and, you know, we can live very long, healthy lives. And I think it really freaked people out, you know, like there's this virus that we've never seen before and it's killing people. And they really latched on to this miracle vaccine. But it did to me cross a line into kind of creepy worship territory.
Yeah, in a sense, insofar as 4chan weaponized autism, the vaccine and the pushers of lockdownism weaponized neurotics. Kind of unleashed or figured out a way to make them the forward guard of the movement.
And I have a lot of empathy because I actually, like I mentioned, I don't really watch the news, but I remember it was probably 2021 or 2020. It was in the thick of it still. I was like in a waiting room and the news was on and I watched it and it was so terrifying. The way that the information was being presented and the way that they were talking about COVID and the ticker tape at the bottom. And I remember watching it going, oh my gosh, like my blood pressure was rising just watching, you know, 5 minutes of CNN or whatever channel it was. And it's like, what do you expect? Like, of course, people are going to be triggered and upset, and I don't know. I try to be empathetic because I was never a COVID denier. I was never like, it's not real or it doesn't exist, but I didn't have the fervor around COVID that some other people did. Yeah. Maybe because I already have a religion, Benjamin.
God-shaped hole token.
Yeah.
No vacancy.
No vacancy. I already have a savior. I already have everlasting life. I don't need, no. Not afraid of death. Check. No.
So, kind of random, mundane question. Have you had any wonderful summer experiences? I know summer's still halfway to go, but
so I have
a lot of amazing things happen to you.
So we just moved to Texas. Haven't really taken a big vacation. I'm actually overdue, so I'll have to take one soon. But I would say the amazing summer experiences have just been kind of swimming in like natural rivers and streams and lakes with my daughters. And it's beautiful. And there are beautiful swimming holes and rivers in Texas. So I've really enjoyed that. And it's been fun. That's pretty much all I've done this summer. But it's beautiful there.
Are you adjusting to the heat? Is it terribly different than LA?
I'm adjusting to it. Yeah, I'm adjusting to it pretty well, actually. I was expecting it to be more humid, and it's more dry in the hill country. So it's not as bad as I thought it would be. It's been okay. It's hot. It's really hot. But, you know, we have a lot of water.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, there we go. Yeah, it's no longer Oregon or Washington. You were in Oregon back in the day?
Yeah, I was in Oregon. Yeah. We decided we would rather like endure a long hot summer than a long cold winter. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Check in with me in September. By September, I might be like, I'm done. Time to like take a vacation to Oregon and get out of this heat. But yeah, we're adjusting. Okay. It's nice.
Well, thank you so much for finally allowing me to interview you.
Yeah, thank you. It was so fun. This is my first podcast. I really enjoyed it.